Hey, business building warrior, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio, the only podcast in e commerce that I'm aware of that features hundreds of stories with the successful students who are implementing the ideas taught on that podcast. Pretty cool concept, I thought. So that's what we do around here. We're coming up on 900 episodes. Hundreds of those episodes are students of ours from the Proven Amazon course. Today's no exception. You're going to meet Mr. Jared Fair. He lives in Canada with his family. It's another homeschooling family. We got a bunch of those in our community. He was recently at our live event in Orlando, Florida in May of 2024. Our next one's in May of 2025, by the way. Last 3 days of May 2025, the 29th, 30th, and 31st. Plan on being in Orlando with us. I think Jared's going to talk you into it after he shares his experiences today. But he's built a foundation. This is a summary of what we're going to cover today. He's built a great foundation. This is his family's only income currently, selling on Amazon using the REPLENS system, which is the base introductory system that we teach for succeeding on Amazon inside our proven Amazon course. By the way, there's a link to everything we're going to talk about today in today's show notes. But if you go directly to silentjimdotcom, you'll see a link to the Proven Amazon course, our free Facebook group, information about our upcoming conferences when there's news there, and all the past podcast episodes. So that's a great resource for you. But as we dive into his story, you're going to soon hear that his true passion is something very different than his Amazon replens, wholesale, retail flipping business. He's actually got a really unique product. He's very excited to share with us. I'm going to go ahead and mention his website because I want him to get some traffic and get some momentum from our community from this. It's called treeclimbercandles.com. That's right. He takes pieces of trees that have a lot of meaning to people, and he reproduces something for them that can last a long time. And it's actually a candle that you could burn, but most people don't because that's a piece of art that represents something important to them. And he's starting to get some real good success from it as well. He's had, as you're going to hear, some really great solid sales so far with his concept. He's still shaping out the business idea. He's actually using one of the great sponsors who was at our conference to help him with this logistics and getting the products made in China. So he's well on his way to launching his own product, but he used the foundation of replens and the relationships in our community to get him to the point where he's ready to go a little deeper. So it's a great story from yet another great family who's doing life and business, incorporating e-commerce concepts they've learned from our community. He's listened to hundreds of our podcast episodes as he's about to share, which is really cool. I always love hearing that people have been around a long time listening to our show and benefiting from it. But it's exciting for me to introduce to you a great listener to the show, a great success story. I think an emerging leader in our community, a guy with an incredible success story that's going to inspire you as well. Mr. Jared Fair. Let's get him on the line right now. So, Jared, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. Good to see you, my friend.
You too, Jim. I'm really glad to be here.
It's an honor, man. This is, like I told you before we hit record, favorite part of my job, and I mean every word of that. But I'm ready to go if you are. Hop into your story. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do it.
So, you just want me to start?
Yeah, get into it.
Yep. Okay. I first discovered
e-commerce.
I first discovered e-commerce in 2019. I mean, I've known about it for a very long time, but that's when I first had my start.
Okay.
And I feel like right now in 2024, I've kind of come full circle. So started my current product line that I'm working with right now way back in 2010, just selling at a farmer's market, but been an entrepreneur and a landscaper and a horticulturist since 2001, and had an amazing mentor back then that ushered me into business and working for myself. So I've always been self-employed right out of high school. High school, college, my dad was a carpenter my entire life. So we worked together as a family, me and my brothers and my dad, right from a young age. So always kind of in the dirt, quite literally, or working with a hammer and nails. And that in itself gave a very resilient mindset, but it also kind of got me stuck in a paradigm that you had to work really physically hard in order to make money in business.
Oh, that's so good.
And yeah, but it took
Can I pause you there for a second, man?
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you so early, but I love what you just said. I was raised on a farm. Not, everyone has their stories about their childhood, but like I legit did 3 to 4 hours of chores every day. That's just how I was raised. I just thought that was normal. right? I mean, even as a young kid, but the resilience that builds into you. And there's a dangerous lesson there as well if you're not careful. And that is what you just said. Unless you're working really hard, working up a sweat, coming home with blisters, you're not doing it right. The world has changed a little
Yep.
bit. You can build a beautiful business without, it still takes blood, sweat, tears, risk, work, sacrifice, but it doesn't require just the languishing over processes that have to be done manually. We've got great tools now, basically, right? So I had to
Yeah.
make that journey similar to what you just described
Yeah.
of, and we've got these power tools, these e-commerce power tools that can do a lot of heavy lifting, and you appreciate it probably more than most would, as do I, because
Yeah,
I've
for
done it the
sure.
hard way. I've done it the hard way. I've pulled 500 ears of corn out of the garden manually. Like I've done those things, right?
You're my people.
Exactly, dude. 50 acres in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, man. That was home till I was 10, 11 years old. And we hit it, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that was basically my youth, is just working hard. But when I went to work for my first boss, the very first day of work, I showed up. I was in high school, had a pair of gloves, and I said, I need a job. I'm looking for a job. And he put me in this back shop, and he had about 500 plants. This was at a garden center and a nursery. And so it got me truly into loving horticulture in the industry.
Was that the
And he
mentor you
said,
mentioned earlier?
yeah, yeah. So his
Really? Same
name, I'll
guy.
just
Okay.
say it here, is it's Paul Hamer from the Saskatoon farm. So if you look this up on the internet, it's just south of Calgary, Alberta, in Canada. And he really taught me the value of just selling a lot of product, but to do a really good job. You can't just sell garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But that very first day that I went to work, he literally put 500 plants in front of me, little 4-inch pots that were being potted up into 6-inch pots or into 1 gallon container sizes. And after I finished this work in about 3 or 4 hours, and he came back and he looked at it and he's like, I now need to find something else for you to do. I was expecting this to take you 2 days. And yeah, I did it, and it was from there on out. We continued to work together for about 4 or 5 years. My family ended up building a restaurant for him and everything. It was a good relationship that extended from 2001 up until when my parents decided to leave the province that I currently live in back in 2007. So a very good business mentor that kind of taught me that you need to find a product that is hard to produce, that no one else can just easily replicate and bring to the world, and bring it in as big of a way as possible. So he got me thinking a little bit bigger that way. And yeah, that was my first exposure to I would say a real entrepreneur. And he would be known as like a galloping entrepreneur, where he has an idea and he just does it. He doesn't sit down and write business plans and stuff like that, which definitely works for some people, but he was definitely on the other end of the spectrum, where he didn't really analyze a lot of stuff. He just went forth and did it. Taught me a love of experimenting and doing stuff like that. So really did appreciate that.
Valuable skill set, especially in e-commerce. I've said frequently on this program, we're coming up on 900 episodes, so I've probably said it 50 times. The way the internet changed business is it made risk not scary,
Hmm.
because you could risk so small and try new things. Before the internet, building a business was risk, and it was a scary risk. It was a big risk. It was a significant time investment, right? Internet means you can
Hmm.
try little things, try simple things, try, see what sticks. And if it sticks, double down, try 10 new things next week and fail at all of them. And the next one you do works. That's how the internet changed things. Is it just, you could experiment so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
those
definitely.
instincts of kind of like, it serves the gallopers well, as you said. I've never heard them called gallopers before, but I like that
Yeah. Well,
terminology.
I heard that term. I did a business course, probably I was going to say around 2005 or something, and they're kind of describing different personality types of
Sure.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's the only one that I actually remember. But they
Right.
just referred to these people as galloping entrepreneurs. They
Mhm.
just gallop and go for it, and that drives some people nuts. Other people, that's the only way they function. So we have to kind of take these things into account as we get to know ourselves and figure out what works best for us. Um, and yeah, having that as a very first mentor who is a very eccentric but successful person, like very successful, and have that person in my life really um, helped form that business sense in me at a young age. So I really do appreciate that. Back, when I was 17 years old, that really
Very
helped me.
valuable lesson. I love it. Yeah, having a respect for entrepreneurship is something our culture has drifted away from too much. Just, you know,
Yeah.
successful entrepreneurs, if you run into them at all, they're the ones being asked, when are you going to give back? And implying they stole something, to get where
Hmm.
they are, or they're the bad guy in the movie. It's
Yeah.
like there's we don't look up to as much as we really should in our cultures, right? The
Yeah.
Hebrew culture looks up to success, like, oh wow, that's someone I could learn from. They've learned to
Yeah.
serve people at scale and built something beautiful. How do
Oh,
we
for
know that?
sure.
Well, because their customers paid them and voluntarily. That's how we know. And they kept coming back. Like, so how'd you do that? Let's learn from that person instead of how are you going to give back, Mr. Keeping everything to yourself guy. Like, no, you don't. So we need to elevate entrepreneurship. I love that. So you learned that at a young age is the point I'm making. And that
Yeah.
has very well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that wasn't always the case in my family, though. It was very deeply ingrained. And I'm pretty sure my mom's going to watch this or listen to it. And no offense to you, mom,
Hi,
but
mom.
I love you very much. But
You're awesome.
I heard a lot growing up that most rich people got that way because they were dishonest, and that was kind of
Some
the
of them do.
farming. Some of them do, and there is truth to that statement. But
Absolutely.
there's also, I've come to learn that there's some honest,
Yeah. Yeah.
incredibly generous, giving people in
Yeah.
the world
The
who
vast
happen to have a
majority.
lot of money.
The
Yeah.
vast majority. Because, this is a theme, a lot of Jordan Peterson talks about this, and Robert Kiyosaki talks about this a good fair amount. Robert Kiyosaki even says, "Hey, you drop me in the middle of any city in the world and charge me with finding the most helpful, caring, genuine,
Mm,
empathy-filled people in that area as fast as possible. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to the nice neighborhood." Because there's
yeah.
going to be some people there who were, you know, inherit a bunch of money from their parents and they're just rotten to the core now, or people who stole their way to the top. But 95% of those people, they got a story, they got a business, first generation wealth, business owners, investors, real estate guys, and they've been through the trenches and they appreciate what it takes, what hard work
Yeah.
can produce, right?
Yeah.
Not that all wealthy
Absolutely.
people are somehow more virtuous. That's not what I'm saying. Of course not. But, as my other mentor, Rabbi Lapin says, I love this theme. He says, if the only thing I know about you is you've built a successful business over an extended period of time, serving happy customers while managing to eke out a profit, if that's all I know about you, you're one of the safest bets I could make as a human being. Male,
Mm,
female backgrounds, where you live, education level, all those things, how you vote, none of that matters. I'm talking about have you run a successful business over an extended period of time with happy customers while making a profit? Because the character traits that goes into that kind of person, self-sacrifice, endurance, delayed gratification, understanding what it means to serve others, just the list goes on and on and on. The leadership qualities, you're a safe bet for just about anything, which
mhm.
has been the philosophy we've built this leadership team around here around. That's our
Yeah.
coach. In some cases, I've talked to him for 15 minutes one time. But over time, we've got to know them because they build a beautiful, successful business. And that's all we really know about them. But those make great leaders, those kind of people.
Yeah. Yeah. After experiencing your conference this year, I am fully on board with all that. Like, your team was amazing,
You
full of
witnessed it.
great people. I witnessed it. I was there, experienced it. I'm a believer. it,
And that's all.
it,
Was that your
it was,
first
it was
time?
truly good.
Your
Yeah. That
first?
was my
Yeah.
first conference this year. And
Okay.
it was, I talked to my wife back in the fall, and I was like, look, I really think that this conference is worth going to. It's worth investing in, and it will be a bit of a sacrifice for us. We have 5 children, and
Mm,
leaving my wife alone with 5 young ones for that 5-day period that I was
big deal.
gone. That's a sacrifice for the whole family.
Yes.
And I didn't want to just go there and have a vacation in Florida. I was
Right.
there for a mission and a purpose
Mhm.
to help get as much out of that experience as I possibly could while networking and meeting other like-minded people. We're also a homeschooling family, so I
Cool.
knew that there's homeschooling families within your community,
Many.
and I was very, very appreciative of yourself when I met you at the conference and I said, look, I really want to network with other homeschoolers. And you pointed to the back of the room and you said, that person back there is the one you want to meet. And I said, thank you. I'm going to meet them.
I
And
remember that now.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's a
that
blur of
that was a
the
blur.
3 days are a blur for me, man. And this year it was more like 7 days because we had a pre-event workshop. But I totally remember we just had the briefest of interactions, and I love that that worked out. Yeah, the person I sent you to is a firecracker too, man. So you guys had a
Yeah.
great time connecting, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, Jared, here's what I want to do. We've opened up about 6 buckets already.
Oh yeah.
You
We
tell me
have.
which one you want to go explore because I've got
Okay.
50 questions in my head,
Well,
but
how
they're
about
all
we
good.
finish the story how I got here? Because
Sure.
I so far I'm in the landscape industry. I had a landscape company up until 2013. My wife and I got married in 2009, so we've been married 15 years this year. And
Congratulations, man.
yeah, it's just I mean we love our family. That's absolutely number one in our lives and our faith lives and our personal lives. Like all these things are very interconnected. I always have wanted to produce landscape products. And even back in 2010, I started selling. My wife and I had a greenhouse that we were able to grow in that was on another property. Just, this other organization had this greenhouse not being used. So we grew tomatoes and did farmers market tomatoes and carrots. And at that same time, I was pruning trees and doing a bunch of this horticultural work. And I came across the odd time some really cool, interesting pieces of wood. And they're completely useless pieces of tree branch. You can't do anything with them. They're, 8 inches long, but they're beautiful, like really, really beautiful pieces of wood. So I was like, what do you do with this stuff? And I decided to, I have to jump back a little bit again here, but back in 2004, I had taken out a provisional patent on a skateboard wheel that I invented. And I used to do longboard drifting. So those long
Oh,
skateboards.
sure. We
We
see them in our
we used to
neighborhood.
go Yeah, used to go downhill on
Yeah.
paved paths, and you drift around the corners, and it feels awesome. And my brother and I were out doing this one day, and I was like, it would be so cool if our wheels would light on fire. And I put flint into my skateboard wheels, and I actually took out a provisional patent on that and tried selling that idea. And a couple years later, one of the companies that I had contacted, I saw came out with another product for scooters where the brake had a flint on it that would light on fire when the kids hit
Mhm.
the brake. So I don't can't totally say that was malicious, but I'm pretty confident I talked to that company.
You probably sparked the idea, right? And
Yeah.
yep, that's interesting. Wow. Has anyone ever done anything else with
Well,
your on the
I
specific
didn't want to
wheels?
take that any further because
Yeah.
I was like, I did that in my early 20s. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is
I
a
got
dumb idea. I don't want to be at fault for starting big forest fires and all this stuff.
you. Sure. Right.
But it was pretty cool. My dad took a couple cool pictures of me and stuff
Yeah.
lighting my wheels on fire. But
That's good.
um, yeah, that's where I learned how to make molds. So I got into mold making, and I've spent a lot of money and invested a lot of time into learning this craft and buying the wrong materials, having failed experiments. So after years, I finally figured out a way to create a perfect mold on these pieces of wood that I was pruning. And then what I decided to do is start casting beeswax candles that were replicas of these tree branches. And as that idea developed and I started getting more ingrained in my career, I started having sometimes sentimental trees come on my radar. So in 2019, I had a lady who wanted me to try and save a tree for her, which she told me the story later. Her mom had died from Alzheimer's, and she loved sitting under this particular tree that was diseased. And I told her that I can't save the tree for you. I can maybe keep it alive for another year. And so I just pruned it in a way that it was still safe to have on the property for another year. And knowing that it was going to die, I brought the tree branches home and made her some candles out of these tree branches and gave that to her for Christmas that year. And at the time that I originally pruned the tree, her mom was still alive. And when I brought the candles back to her from the time that I last was working for her to when I gave her the candles, her mother had just passed away 2 months
Wow.
prior.
Wow. A treasured gift then for sure.
Yeah, so I gave those candles to her, and her she broke down. Like, she was just
Mhm.
crying and so appreciative of that gift. And there's been other sentimental projects. I've been passionate about trees my whole life and proper pruning and on all of this sort of tree maintenance that only a real tree care professional would be aware of. There was a tree in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, called the Basking Ridge oak tree, and it used to be in the Presbyterian churchyard. It was the oldest living white oak tree at the time that that tree died. And the significance of this particular tree is that George Washington, now I'm Canadian, I don't know American history very well, but I know George Washington, before the United States truly existed, was meeting with a lot of the army generals or whoever the guys were that he was working with at around the time of the foundation of the United States. They would meet underneath this tree. And I also, this one, that's verified. Okay, so that actually happened. But it's also rumored that the original seamstress of the American flag was buried underneath that tree.
Wow.
And that's in the Basking Ridge, New Jersey
Uh,
Presbyterian Church Cemetery.
I think that was Betsy Ross. I think. Does that name
Okay,
sound right?
yeah, that does sound familiar.
Yeah.
But like I said,
Original
I just
seamstress.
I need to look more into the
Very
American
cool though. But
history.
a lot of tradition in American history, patriotism
Mhm.
associated with that tree that I take it is now gone, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that tree was the oldest white oak tree in the world, and it died in
Mhm.
2017, I believe was the year. And I called up the arborist that was in charge of removing that tree, told him about my project, and he actually shipped me some of the wood,
Wow.
which I have. So this is an original piece of the wood from that tree.
That's incredible. For those who are listening, he's holding up what is that, a 6 inch
Yeah,
long,
it's
maybe
about
3 inch wide?
exactly, yeah. And piece of tree branch from that Basking Ridge, New Jersey white oak tree.
Very cool.
And
Big little piece of
along
history.
yeah, so along with that wood that he shipped me, he actually had these certificates made up, which he also sent me. So it's a certificate of
That's
authenticity.
pretty cool. Okay.
So anyway, I've made some candles from that tree, and I've always really, really loved this project. I've Over the past years, my first dive into e-commerce in 2019 was creating a website for that brand. And I decided when my landscape season wrapped up and the ground's frozen here in Canada, I was going to go just spend a few months before Christmas making candles and shipping them. So that was the first time I built an e-commerce website. I I had that website go up. I believe it was the first week of October. I did not know what I was doing at this time. Okay. So listened to a lot of podcasts and stuff in the past with Pat Flynn and Smart Passive Income, John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire. Those were things that I listened to for a good 5 years while I was commuting to and from work. And so I had these basic concepts in my brain, how this stuff should work, set up a Shopify store, started experimenting with Facebook ads. And I had about a $200 ad budget on Facebook running ads to my Shopify store. And in 3 weeks, I sold $5,000 worth of candles. And
Wow.
I then had to fulfill all those orders.
That's a lot of shipping.
So I was stuck in my basement
Yeah.
making these candles and then shipping them all. And that's when I discovered how awful shipping is in Canada and how I was going to go broke if I kept this up.
You were losing
So
money.
I pulled back and I was like, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Hmm.
And that's when I found out about Amazon FBA.
Hmm.
And I started up an Amazon account. I listed my first few candles on there and it actually sold. But I realized that I could not scale this. There's no way I want to try and set up a manufacturing operation making candles. It was not, I knew that I couldn't do it cheap enough. It was just going to be an unsustainable business practice. At that exact same time, I was wrapping up a landscape project 2 hours away from where I live. And I was living in my fifth wheel trailer while I was working during the week and coming home on weekends.
Right.
And I started searching for podcasts. And I went through about every Amazon seller podcast I could find, and I came across yours. And yours is the only one that I still listen to.
Wow.
So that was
That's an
5 years
honor.
ago. That was 5 years
5 years.
ago.
Dude, that's awesome.
And right before I did that, I was actually shopping at a store, and I had already had my account set up, and I
Mhm.
found a loony bin of some discount items. I found some tennis balls that were selling for $2. And I don't know what sparked me to do this, but I just discovered on my seller app that I could scan barcodes. So that was the very first item I'd ever scanned, was a tin of tennis balls. And I saw it, and it's like, I can sell this for $30. And I did the profit calculation. I was like, I'm going to profit probably $15 to $20 off of this item that I picked up for $2.
Yep.
And that's more money than I was making when I had to manufacture and go through the whole process of branding and setting up my own website and everything for these candles. And I was hardly making any money off them. And I realized that selling other people's products is probably way more profitable in e-commerce. And then I had the
Yeah.
thought, I was like,
When you're new, it
oh,
definitely is.
and then I had the thought, and I was like, it'd be so great if I could just replicate this process and figure out a way to just do this in stores. And if I had a way of replenishing products, because I
Mhm.
didn't have a way of doing that at the time. And then I started listening to your podcast, and my jaw hit the floor. It was like, this is what this is. This is the
That's what we
REPLENS
do here.
model. That's what this guy's teaching. And he's
That's
doing
right.
it with full priced items off of
Yep.
retail stores. And it changed my life. So I started slowly scaling that up in 2020, just doing everything you teach. I did a quick immersion through the pack course. I was, like I said, living in my fifth wheel trailer. I signed up for the pack. I did the entire course within about a week and a half, just binged on it. And then I just went and
Wow.
did it. And then I started, slowly building up my inventory. And by I can't remember the exact years now. It was, I think, February 2021. I was just about to hit 10,000 a month in sales. And one of my best friends, where I live here locally, was building a house and had his lead carpenter drop out on him. And like, he's already got all the materials and everything sitting in his yard. And he unfortunately knew that I had a lot of carpentry experience. He's like, Jared,
Unfortunately new. It's kind of like the guy, kind of like never
yeah,
buy a pickup truck when you're in college, man. You're the guy that unfortunately has a truck every time anyone needs to move.
yeah. So I have a very hard time saying no to these types of
Right.
necessities. So I told the guy, I said, look, I've been building this business up for the last year, and I'm just about to the point where I can live off this. And I wasn't planning on getting any more jobs. And he convinced me otherwise. So I helped him build his house for about a year and a half to 2 years.
Wow.
And it was
Big
just me and
project.
him. Yeah, me and him. We built. This guy was insane. Like, he built a small workshop on his property. He built a uh, root cellar with a chapel on top of it. Really cool project. And he built a house, doing this all at the same time. So 3 buildings, all in one massive project. And he's planting fruit trees and doing a bunch of stuff on his property. So it was a good project, but it was unexpected. So I just told him, I said, look, for the last 6 months that we're working on your house, I'm going to start pulling back, and we'll kind of graduate out of this so that I can get my Amazon business fired back up. So yeah, we started doing that. The years are a blur to me now, quite literally. So that was 20.
2022,
I think
probably.
that was 2022, fall of
You getting
2022.
into back into Amazon after helping him
Yeah,
for a year
so
plus?
scaling. So what I did is, basically, when we started, it was like, okay, I'm doing one day a week on Amazon, 4 days a week with you. And then we just slowly shifted that to 2 days, 3 days, 3 days, 2 days. And then
Right.
we kind of, we were able to scale the Amazon business back up naturally while scaling back from that other income source.
Beautiful.
And then, as of last October 2023, I still did a few other minor projects for other people, including my brother, who lives somewhere else and needed some hard labor help last summer, and can't say no to my brother either, apparently. But he needed help, so I helped him. But I told him last October, I said, I'm not doing anymore. We're done.
We'll get back to the show in just a moment, but I have to tell you about a coaching program that's been around for about 19 years. It's coached almost 10,000 e-commerce business building warriors. It's got a team of about 60 coaches who are not only great teachers with tremendous hearts who love their students, but they are all succeeding at the business strategies that you hear taught on this show. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm talking about our coaching program. There's a link at silentjimdotcom. Get over there, get on our schedule, have a free consultation, zero pressure. We're going to help you build your business on that call. Sign up at silentjim.com, free consultation. See if our coaching program is a good fit for you, where you get to not only work one-on-one with one of our tremendous coaches, not only do you get that, you also get a reactive coach that you can contact at any point in time. That's a separate coach. You get all the training and content that we provide around here at no cost now and into the future. Tremendous list of benefits. I'm not going to go into all of them right now. silentjim.com. Click on the coaching link, sign up for a consultation. Hey, let's get back to the program.
My brother, who lives somewhere else and needed some hard labor help last summer, and can't say no to my brother either, apparently. But he needed help, so I helped him. But I told him last October, I said, I'm not doing anymore. We're done. So I have not taken on any other outside work outside of Amazon since last October now. It's been the sole income for my family. And I started with the retail arbitrage. I didn't ever really get into online arbitrage very much. I really got my start by going into the stores and just dedicating a couple hours after work. Some nights I live in a very small town, so I'd have to travel 45 minutes away to these nearest stores. But that's how I got started. Retail arbitrage, just going up and down store shelves, not scanning barcodes anymore, but searching for brands, searching for multi-packs, bundles, those types of listings.
Yep.
And I was very scrupulous on profitability. There's that saying, it is revenue is vanity, profit is sanity.
Yep.
I experienced that throughout my entire business life. And when I was aiming for my first 5,000 a month, I was only doing that on 100% profit margins. So not profit margins, but ROI, 100% ROI,
Gotcha.
30 to 50% profit margin.
Yeah.
And
That's pretty good numbers though.
Yeah. So
really good numbers.
When that first 5 to 10,000 a month for my business is very profitable, and that allowed me to grow. So now I'm just going to tell another aside right now, because my numbers for the last 2 months have been dropping a little bit since I was at the conference. And that's only because my wife and I have been doing a lot of work to our current house so that we can sell this property.
Gotcha.
and move back closer to my parents. So I've just for the last 2 months, it's been a little bit strategic, but my sales have gone from 20,000 a month, and I'm currently at 8,000 a month right now.
Yeah. Just not sitting in the same volume of inventory.
Yeah. I just had to pull back for the last couple of months, but now I've completed pretty much everything, and I'm going to be going very hard back into that.
Good time to do it with Q4 creeping up on us,
Yeah. So I just started buying a lot of toys and everything actually this week. So at the conference, picked up the book Toyfolio by Greg Webb. I believe that was one of the sessions.
Yep.
And in there, I haven't read the whole book myself. I gave it to my 13-year-old son, and he read it in a day. And he's like, Dad, we got to go hit the sales in July and August for toys, because that's when Walmart's doing the clear outs and getting ready for Q4.
Yep. And then you to clear their shelves, right? And then that stuff's going to sell for a lot more than what you paid. Yeah. Summer represents buying opportunities, and then Q4 is selling opportunities, and for toys. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've already started doing that just this last week, and we're going to start ramping up again here as we go into the fall and growing the business. So what I've been able to do now is I know what my bread and butter is. I know that for me, primarily selling wholesale, I have 3 good wholesale accounts that I'm using, and it works much better for me because I do live in a small town in a remote location in Canada. I cannot just go to a big city and just do RA, or even OA is kind of hard sometimes because there's big businesses that won't even ship to my town. But my wholesale suppliers, their customer service and their shipping is amazing. So I do everything from my home. It comes to my home and I have UPS come here, take it away. It wouldn't be healthy, but I could quite literally just live in my basement for the rest of my life doing this if I wanted to. But
Right.
we want to get out a little bit more.
Sure.
But the wholesale is now my bread and butter. That's what pays the bills. And that has given me the freedom and the cash flow to start venturing out into a little bit more experimentation again. So this story, what I'm about to tell you, is now coming full circle from 15 years ago. So those candles that I have, I still love that product, and so do people who've experienced those candles. And what happened for me at your conference was totally transformational and life changing. I had actually, I'm not sure when, but I heard about the company Glovendor. It's Glovendor
I'll stick a
dot
link to them
io.
in the show notes. They were
Yeah.
a great sponsor at our conference. They contacted me pretty close to when the event was happening and said, "We want to be there. That's our kind of people. Tell us how to make it happen." And so they popped in at the last minute, and we're still kind of getting to know them. But I'm hearing so many positive things about these guys. But I know you had a really positive experience working with them. And yeah, just to fill people in on who they
Yeah.
are.
Okay. So I just, full transparency, I was not seeking this out before the conference.
Right.
Had zero intentions of this happening. It was totally organic, and so happy it happened. I found out about Glovendor probably 6 months prior to your conference and had been on their website. And it's like, man, that company looks like a really good fit for what I have developed.
Really?
And
I didn't realize that. I thought you connected
yeah,
with them only because of the event, but you
well,
actually
I
heard them.
didn't know, I knew about them,
Okay. Well,
but
that's really cool.
had no clue they were going to be at the conference
Right. Well, I didn't either till
at
a few
all.
weeks before. I
Yeah.
think they were the last sponsor to come on board a
Okay.
few weeks before the event.
Well, I'm happy they did.
Yeah.
so
So am I.
So during the conference, I saw that TJ from Glovendor was going to be giving his session. And that was one of the first ones I started off. Okay, I'm going to go to that one. And in his session at the end during the Q&A, I asked a pretty vague question, but I was like, look, if I have a product that I've invented and I've created, because what their company does is they take products from ideation right to market.
Mhm.
And there's even businesses within their network that have made exits and everything. So they've run the whole gamut of this business product life cycle, from product sourcing, with international partners, whether it be China or other countries, or even domestic manufacturing. They have connections globally. So that's what Glovendor means. It's global vendor. And so I saw TJ at the conference, and I asked him at the end of his talk, I was like, look, can I take a product that I've created and invented, and can you help me find a manufacturing partner for that thing? Because I know that I can't do these candles in my basement.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, we definitely can. I didn't tell him what I created or anything. He just said yes. And that was it. That was my interaction with him during the talk. And then at the conference, I had a VIP ticket, and we had 2 VIP lunches of the 3 days we were there. So I used up my 2 VIP lunches the first 2 days. On the third day, I was there with a friend who still had one of his meal tickets left. And I said, well, you better not waste that meal ticket. You better go get you your free lunch. And I went in there with him, and I found out I could still go in and get lunch if I paid $20. So
Yeah.
pulled out my American $20 bill, which I knew I didn't want to take home with me anyway. And it was
There you
like,
go.
paid my admission. And when we went in there, I saw TJ sitting alone at a table, and just told my friend, I said, look, I'm going to go sit with TJ and talk to him for a little while. And we had a great conversation, about 20 to 30-minute lunch, just talked personally, and then maybe only 5 minutes of business talk. And I told him about my candles. I said, I think your company is a perfect fit. And he's like, let's do this. So he said, I'm going to send you my contact info. As soon as you get back to Canada, set up a call with some other people that work with him. And we did that. So as soon as I got back to Canada, followed up, got on a Zoom, got the product sourcing. I guess I have a hard time describing the whole process. It's pretty involved, but basically taking my candles that I make and have invented. And I've now, just as of a few days ago, have shipped my own proprietary molds and plastic replicas that I've created. Those are now in transit. They're going to be arriving in China next week at the factory that's going to replicate that. And yeah, that whole process went so smoothly. Working with Glovendor was an absolute, well, has been and will continue to probably be a great pleasure. So, that was a direct connection. The entire trip was worth it for that one interaction.
That connection.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that one connection.
And
And when
what's your goal? What's your vision for this product? You're going to continue to sell it on Amazon, I imagine, but also
yeah,
through your own website, which you mentioned you
yeah,
have a website. I want to hear what that is. Where do you think this is going? It sounds like when you ran some Facebook ads, this thing took off pretty quick.
yeah. I do want to grow it as a brand as much as possible, and take that into the future. I unfortunately was not able to go to, is Mike Brown from Deathwish Coffee.
Yeah, Mike.
I watched his replay from the conference online, but there was another session that I had to go to instead of his at the
Sure.
conference. But you know what? Rewatching his live stream and seeing what he's grown with Deathwish Coffee. I mean, he's grown $100 million brand.
Right.
I have no idea, how far Tree Climber Candles is going to go, but it's it's a vision of mine to grow the brand and ultimately have an exit with it so that I can move on to other ideas. I've got software ideas. I've got so many ideas.
Sure.
I need some money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I will always create candles. Even if I sell the brand, I would probably do a licensing agreement to, develop future candles and whatnot, because there's always people who have some sort of sentimentality behind a significant tree. I actually have a bit of a lead right now on a family that's selling their family property that's been in the family for a long time. And there's a significant tree on the property that they would like to have something created from. So there's opportunities even to do the odd kind of custom candle, I guess, for these types of clients that want to save a piece of their family history in that way. So, I love helping people. I'm a pretty sentimental person, and I personally see a lot of history, and the detail in these candles is, as a Christian, I see a lot of our faith in what I produce. To me, it's art. It's an art that shows me. We typically stand back and we see the big picture and the big tree. Like, isn't that a glorious big tree that God produced? But the story of the mustard seed and how the smallest seed produces the biggest tree.
Right.
And if you really step and take a look at that mustard seed under the microscope, you're going to see just as much beauty at a
Yeah.
microscopic level as you are at a grand level.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I'm producing these candles, it is relaying that same emotion. Like, it picks up the mold compound and stuff that I use will pick up detail as fine as a fingerprint. And so when you see that embedded in beeswax, and it's a perfect replica of that minute detail of these tree branches, it's amazing just to sit there and hold at them, or to hold them
Wow.
and look at them. And
That's
the
amazing.
the unfortunate comment that I get from these candles is that people who get them are like, man, this is too nice to burn.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Don't ever want to get
So
rid of it.
yeah, I need to figure out a way to actually get people to light them up. But
Have your cake and eat it too, kind of thing, right?
yeah.
Wow. Well, so if someone wants to see a picture of what your work looks like, what's the website? You told me before we hit record today.
Yeah, so we're just getting up a landing page set up so that we can start taking emails, because we haven't figured out pricing information or anything like that yet. The candle molds have to actually arrive. We are outsourcing this aspect to China.
Right.
So once the molds are replicated and they can kind of figure out the volume of wax and everything that's required, then I'll have firm costs. So at this point, I don't actually know what the final retail cost is going to be, but we do have a website at treeclimbercandles.com
I'll stick
set
it in
up
the
so
show
that,
notes too.
yeah. So
Treeclimbercandles.com.
yeah, so then we can start at least taking people's email addresses if they, want to look into this project further into the
Yeah,
future.
that's
Um,
awesome.
but but yeah, I really, if this one thing takes off, my actual Amazon wholesale business might become secondary to this
Sure.
primary project.
Yeah. Well, and I love it too, just to kind of interject as I'm to kind of superimpose my thought process of what we teach around here onto your story. I don't, we don't teach replens because we want people to stay there the rest of their life and do only that, replenishing Amazon's underserved shelf space. You that's a viable business. It's a virtuous business. It's an in-demand, much needed product that you're providing to, helping strangers buy the random widgets that they need. But quite often, more often than not, what it becomes is a way to free up your time, free up your capital a little bit, get some wiggle room so you can do those things that you feel called to do and be a part of. Build a profitable business, build out systems, free up your time, use that money. So you see that's kind of where you're rolling is you've got this proven system and you can scale it, you can do as much of it as you want. You've had your $20,000+ months and you've got a very profitable model going there, but you're going to use this to fuel and fund and free up your time to do this thing that you're kind of made for, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
far more passionate about selling one of these tree mold candles to client than you are, say, a can of tennis balls for $15 net profit once it's
yeah,
said and done. The person who got those tennis balls is thrilled with their purchase, but your heart's not in it to the degree that your heart's in seeing one of these trees go to a family that helps them preserve part of their family's legacy when they move away, right?
yeah,
That's just like, and it shows. But I love how you've blended the two worlds because too often I feel like I see people kind of fall off onto one end or the other. They're all in on this
mhm,
passion project that never really goes anywhere. I always wanted to be a rock star and I don't care what it takes. And like, okay, dude, you're 40 and you've never made any money. It's time to think about something else, maybe to fund your life, right?
yeah,
Or you go the other way. It's like, as long as I'm making money, it's good, good, good money. It's like, what were you made for? What is it
mhm,
that you're supposed to be using this extra margin you now have financially and time that like what is it you were supposed to be putting your hands to that's maybe a little bigger than this? Um,
yeah,
so I love the how you've blended the two, and I just want to take a moment to point that out from my vantage point. That's a beautiful blending.
yeah. Thank you. I know it is a passion project at this point, but I think it could become much more than that.
Oh,
And
obviously, I mean, if you spent a few $100s and made $5,000 in sales,
yeah,
you're on to something, dude. You're on to
yeah. Oh,
something
for
for
sure.
sure.
I know that. And the thing is I'm not a professional marketer or anything like that. So
Hmm.
I'm totally confident that with the right people who actually know what they're doing,
Hmm.
pushing that aspect of the business forward,
Yep.
yeah, I think the potential for growth is phenomenal.
Yep.
And there, if you look at actual candle companies that exist right now, there's some very big players in the market, and I know the industry as a whole is a couple $1 billion a year in
Sure.
the US. So yeah, getting into the candle industry, into the business in a niche way that I'm doing it can definitely work.
Fantastic. Well, I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp of what you're building, where you're heading, where your heart is in this whole business thing. But what thoughts or lessons might you have for the listeners today, just from your journey so far? Because I do have a bit of a schedule crunch today where I'll have to start wrapping this up soon. We have plenty of time, but I want to make sure if there's any lessons that you wanted to make sure the listeners heard today, that we get time for those. Like
Mhm.
if you had anything, I'm not sure what or if you
It,
had anything on that list.
I think it's important for people to truly know themselves. They need to know what their calling is if they're that deep into pursuing their vocation. You want to be doing something that you love. And it's I'm not saying, go be an artist and try and be starving for the rest of your life, but be practical at the same time. So figure out how to make the cash flow happen and then enter your passion projects in a way where you're not carrying a ton of risk. I'm not betting my mortgage on this one project and taking food off my kids' table.
Mhm.
It's knowing myself, what my true skill set is, which for me is finding uncommon beauty in kind of everyday items, and combining that with my horticulture background and making all those things mesh together. But the way my brain works is I am extremely strategic, so I can see, things kind of like a spider web, and then I'll find the path to the middle very fast. So figuring out the roadmap. And one way I've been able to do that, and maybe this is where the advice would come in for people, I've listened to hundreds of episodes of your podcast, and I've listened to thousands of episodes of podcasts in general. And there's a concept that you teach that I greatly appreciate, but I also want to throw a spin on this. So you always say an inch deep and a mile wide. John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire, give him credit for this one. He said, once you find something, you go an inch deep or inch wide and a mile deep.
Absolutely.
And then you end up digging for diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the strategy here is
Yeah.
I've gone an inch deep and a mile wide with my wholesale REPLENS business.
Right.
But now I've got a few little nuggets where I'm drilling for diamonds
Yes.
at the same time.
Beautiful, beautiful visual. And we say that all the time around here to people who are new, especially people who have spent a lot of time spinning their wheels and nothing's really worked, and the shiny objects and YouTube videos and courses, and none of it's ever worked. Like, pump the brakes. Let's go an inch deep and a mile wide. Let's fill the underserved shelf space at Amazon. We call it the low high, lowest risk, lowest learning curve, lowest investment required, highest odds of you building a real business that gives you flexibility and cash. That's why we teach it. It's the
Yeah.
lowest risk, highest odds of return. But that's not necessarily going to be what you do with the rest of your life. That's a foundation, that inch deep, mile wide foundation. Now you're going to discover niche markets, branding opportunities, wholesale relationships, or your own product. And you're going to, like you said, drill deep. And I've never heard that drill for diamonds. I love that. If you
Yeah.
start off day one just drilling for diamonds, you can end up just spending your life digging holes. You've
Yeah.
got to
Oh,
go,
yeah.
you got to go meet some need first. And then with that margin, spend some time
Mm-hmm.
trying to dig deep. And
Yeah.
then, I believe in the law of specialization,
Mm.
meaning, we all function better if we're not a bunch of generalists who can do a little bit of everything, but if we're all specialists, right? I want a dentist
Yeah.
that is completely incompetent at carpentry, right?
Absolutely.
I could care less about his carpentry skills. I want him really good. Like, that's all he does. He can't cook a meal. He can't do a lot of things. He's completely clueless on many, many, many things, but he's good at this. As a society, we function better when we have that, right? But as entrepreneurs, sometimes we go for that too soon and we
Yeah.
ignore these incredible opportunities that are right here with a little sweat equity. Man, just build some stability. And then, I always use the example like, okay, 14th century Roman poetry and pottery, right? You're like, okay, then you can build your blog about that once you've got some basic foundational steady income,
Yeah.
serving in a much needed niche market here. So yeah, it's the blending of the two. And I
Yeah.
never want to talk anyone out of pursuing their dreams, but
Oh,
you got to pay the bills, and
mm.
it's never been easier to launch multiple streams of income. And Replens is the way, we talk about it a lot because it just works, man. It just works.
Yeah.
And
Well,
as an e-commerce guy, I've been doing this 20 years. I haven't had anything that I've been able to latch onto the past 6 years, where it's just like, yes, if you pay attention, if you do the
mm,
details, here's the proof, here's the market, here's the evidence, here's the tool, go do it. It puts money in the bank. And then wax, candle, tree, molds,
yeah.
or then, whatever we got pet rescue people and we got all kinds of people with big missions, right? This is how
Mm,
you fund it. I
yeah.
love it.
What I found is maybe this analogy might help a little bit as well. But when you're doing the inch deep, mile wide, it's almost like the diamonds will let you know where they are,
They will.
and
They leave clues.
you'll see this inch deep, mile wide, and you'll see some sparkles on the ground,
Mhm.
and you're like, okay, I got to drill here, and
Get
that's
a
when
little
you go
deeper.
deep. You
Mhm.
go deep on
And a lot
that.
of times those sparkles are relationships, phone calls,
Yeah.
conversations, right? Like you talked about your conversation with TJ at Glovendor. There's something there. Let's dig a little deeper. We're not taking any huge risks, but let's go down this road. It's always a person. It seems
Yeah.
like it's always a person. When you start getting out of replens and you start getting into wholesale, it's a contact at a wholesaler. It's like, yeah, you know what? You're small. We don't usually give this kind of discount, but I like you. We've talked a few times. Here's our best price kind of stuff. Like, because you had a conversation. It's always people that
Yeah.
lead you down in those. So you look for those little shiny sparks. It's people. It's contacts.
Absolutely.
Relationships.
And I just want to relay one more quick story. This
Yeah.
relates to when I got back from the conference. Rob and Joy, I did not
Olson.
meet them there. Olson. So I heard them on the podcast after I returned,
Yeah.
and there's something just really funny little anecdote. But because of the way I started on Amazon, I started as a handmade seller.
As a
So
what seller? Sorry.
as a handmade seller.
Handmade. Yeah, sure. You were
Yeah.
selling your candles.
Okay. Yeah. So as a handmade seller, you get a free professional seller account. So I started off my Amazon journey not having to pay for a professional seller account.
Hmm.
And I discovered REPLENS after the fact. And I kind of dumb luck stumbled into my professional Amazon selling via being a handmade seller. And over the years now, I mean, if Amazon hears this podcast and they flip the switch on me, so be it. But I've I've had about 5 years of free professional Amazon seller accounts. My account, I've never paid for it,
That's a cool thing.
and I dropped that one off at somebody at the conference in a private conversation. Is like, you might want to keep this a little bit quiet because I don't know how it's going to spread and if Amazon's just going to stamp it out or what.
Right.
But I heard on the podcast with Rob and Joy, what when you're talking about worth the WPAs, worth the price of
Right. I
admission.
know what you're saying. Yeah, they mentioned that as like
Yeah,
it was worth the price of admission. But this one tip we heard from this
yeah,
guy who'd heard from a guy like that. You're the one that started that. I got you now. Okay, that's
yeah.
cool.
So it's just one of the key ideas of your conference is, and I think it was Carl Jacoby's talk, and he said the value of ships and having relationships. So all of these things became possible because of that. All of them. These relationships are invaluable. And, the homeschool community that's selling online, being a homeschool family can be lonely. Being an online seller homeschool family is extra lonely. And just having these kinds of people in my life now to network with, those relationships, those are good ships to be on. And
Absolutely. Well
yeah,
said.
so that's the advice is
Yeah.
find your people.
Yeah. Find your people, then you can find your purpose, as a pastor once said that I heard. And you talk about the isolating lifestyle that we have to push back against. It was when 2020 happened. It was a meme. I think I shared it on somewhere Instagram or something, but it basically saying, so we have to stay home and work from home and hang out with our families. Like, yeah, that's what we do. Like,
Yeah.
that's normal for us. That's our normal everyday life. Like, we didn't really change a lot of our routines at all around here, but we were certainly prepared for it while the rest of the world was scrambling, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, that's awesome. I feel like there's so many other things we could talk about, but I think we painted a really good picture today of what's possible, the quality of the people in this community, the value of relationships, the value of the stuff we teach works, even if you're not passionate about it. That's one of the more grating. Maybe I'll end here, and I talk about this a lot in the Silent Sales Machine book. I commit a good section of it to this, but I think it's overdone a little bit when we can encourage people to pursue their passions, because I've seen now literally thousands of people become very passionate about selling on Amazon when they never thought they would be. Why? What happens? When something works, you get passionate about it. Or as Daniel Lapham would say, when you've got a long line of people lined up to say thank you, as evidenced by these little green pieces of paper we call money, certificates of gratitude, you get a long line of people waiting to hand you those, you'll get passionate about whatever it is. I don't care what it is. You've got them grateful and you're providing a valuable service and it's profitable. You're gonna get passionate about that. But that doesn't mean you abandon your other passions. But you don't want to set out in pursuit of finding my passion. Like, you could waste your whole young adulthood and
Yeah.
get into your, you could be a 50-year-old
Yeah.
boy still looking for his passion, right? Like, no, serve, provide value, earn a profit, and build from there and go deep, from there. That's doing life the right way with the opportunities we have in front of us now, in my opinion. Again,
Yeah.
because I've seen it work for so many, and you're a great illustration of that. Perfect textbook illustration. Well done, man.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, any parting
Um,
thoughts before we I do have to start to wrap this one up, man. I
oh,
got another call.
young people getting started. You don't know what you want to do. Just do something. Just get started. Go volunteer. Go do a mission trip. Do something.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what? It's not going to fall in your lap. You have to go for it and do it.
Expand your network of people and connections. Yeah. But that's what I
Yeah.
hear when you say those things. Go do something meaningful and expand your network of, don't sit at home and surf the web trying to find what you were made for. That's not the way forward. That is not the way.
Oh,
Start a business, get out there, make things happen, meet people. Absolutely. Good advice, man. Well, I want to get to know you better at some other point in time. I've run out of time today, but man, it's been really cool getting to know you. And I love the project you've got going. I love how you were able to use one of the great sponsors from our conference to make that happen. I'll stick links to all that for the listeners today. But well done, Jared. Good to meet you, man.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Well, for the listeners who hung out with us today, you are the best part of our show. Without you, it's just two guys having a conversation. But you spreading the word, telling others about this, and helping grow our community, which, by the way, we just passed 76,000 members in our free Facebook group. We're kind of celebrating that around here. That's a big deal, especially when you consider we block most people who try to get into that group. We don't even let them in. We have pretty good spam filters and clown filters in place. So it ends up being a collection of serious business building warriors who are rooting for each other, who don't see each other as competitors. Come join us. We'd love to have you in our group. And we talked a little bit about today our conferences. Our next one's not until May of 2025, but you can get details about it at theprovenconference.com. But look for all the links and stuff we talked about in today's show notes near where you're watching or listening to this. Got a lot of good resources for you. But thanks for listening, hanging out with us today. And do know this, that we're rooting for you. We're in your corner. We're praying for you. We want you to succeed. We do not see you as a competitor. We see you as a fellow business building warrior. And thanks for joining us for today's show. We'll have another good one for you very soon. We'll talk to you then.